department's YouTube channel that we've been curating with these incredible artist talks that our photographers are just doing out of their goodness of their hearts. So we really appreciate everything. I do first want to thank the fine. Oh, hi, Eric. Thank you. I want to thank the Fine Arts and Communications Department and specifically Dean Ron Herman just for their support of the photography program here at Foothill and for look at the red background. This is perfect. But just really helping us get this up and running. It's been a year now, and our students and our community are really benefiting from being able to see work from not only area photographers, but also the broader community. We've got a show coming up after yours, Jessica, that will be from a photographer who worked for years in Kenya, my former home. Hi, Kendra. In any event, on to the talk at hand. We have Jessica Chen. She is a Bay Area documentary photographer. She grew up in California. She was born in San Francisco. She grew up in Pacifica. She earned her BS in environmental design, which is super interesting, and with an emphasis in visual communication. And she has a BA in studio art from the University of California, Davis. And then Jessica also has an MFA in design and tech with an emphasis in narrative and documentary film. This is amazing. From Parsons School of Design at the New School at New York City. She's on the board of the East Bay Photo Collective. If you all don't know what that is, it's an amazing group. I know, right? You know what that is, Kendra. And she's also a member of APA and the Los Angeles Center for Photography and Women in Street, which I need to check out as well. I'm going to check that out at the end of this quarter. Her photographs have been published all over the place, exhibited widely, and we are super, super fortunate to have her images up in our Gallery 6100 here on campus. That's in building 6100. Here comes somebody else. And it will be up through the end of the quarter. So if you want to come by and check it out, the gallery's open from noon to 3 on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And then if you reach out to me, and you can find my email just by sneezing probably. I'll make sure to find a time to get you in to see it. And without further ado, Jessica, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judy, for having me and hosting this talk. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to have my first solo show at Foothill College. I love the campus. It's beautiful, it's serene. I really couldn't think of a better place to have my first solo. So really, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to work with you and putting the solo exhibition together. If you all don't know, the title of the exhibition is called People, Parades, and Protests. And it's a series that I've been putting together for about, I want to say almost 10 years. And, it's sort of been part of my street photography work, and it's been extremely fulfilling. Actually, I'm going to, should I start to share
Yeah,
screen?
that would be
Yeah.
great. Uh-huh.
Okay, hold on. Bear with me, guys.
Oh, you got this. You're an old pro now. It worked.
Yeah, there you go. Um, so here we go. This is the title of the exhibition and also the title of this artist talk, People, Parades, and Protests. And basically, I wanted to give you, I mean, Judy gave me a great intro, but I'll just add to that. I studied graphic design at UC Davis and fine art studio. And so the BS in environmental design had to do with visual communication, which is another term for graphic design. So I was a graphic designer, an illustrator, a painter, um, and all that led me to make work that was about seeing. And then I also had a degree um, in my MFA in documentary film. So I made a lot of work in documentary and editing and shooting. And so that all informed my photography. And surprisingly enough, it creeps in, and all the principles I learned and kind of my work experience all folded into my street work. And you'll see as I go along where that might have happened. Let's see what else. I guess I will start off with the first photograph that I made that made me realize this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. as as long as I'm walking and I could still see, I want to make street photos. And so this photo came about. I was walking back to the train station or the subway station in Brooklyn, and I ran into a friend and we had a conversation. But in the background, I heard sirens going, and this was like the first time the impulse in me was to run towards danger. And so I ended the conversation as quickly as I could, and I just ran towards the sound of the fire engines all gathering. It was probably about 4 blocks, and I came to the intersection, and the firemen had blocked off all 4 corners. And so I ran around each corner photographing and trying to document the scene. And I had no idea if it was a gas leak, it was going to be explosion. So all these things were running through my mind to really stay out of the way, but also document. And so this photo came about. It's titled Brooklyn Fireman. And I say it singularly because it's focused on the one giving me the dirty eye.
The stink eye. I used to get
Yeah.
that too.
And so, it was interesting because I was confident that I was allowed to make this photograph because it was in public and they're public servants. But he was giving me the eye saying, "Oh, don't you do it." And in my head, I was fighting it. I was like, "I'm going to do it." And so I did it. And, it came out to be such a pivotal photo for me because the way he looked at me was the way a lot of people I felt in my life looks at me like strangers. Their first impression is always kind of, you know, um, not always welcoming. And so that was something that I dealt with a lot all my life. And so this photo for me, it might not be the, most perfect photo, but for me, it was the most significant that set me on my path to making more street photos. Okay, so there's that. And this photo um, is kind of part of another series I'm working on about studying the female gaze, and in particular, my female gaze. And because I have a disability, I think a lot of people assume things about, my sexual proclivities. And so, this is something that I know, men have, I mean, we've seen the female gaze incessantly in media and whatnot. And so this was my approach to um, the female gaze, like what it means to me. And so this is kind of a start of that.
I really appreciate that background.
Yeah. And this is another photo, and this is also um, kind of included in that series as well. Mm. This was made in 2017 during the first Women's March that was kind of collectively held around the world in major cities. This was one of my very first marches, but also protest marches. But I've been to a number of protest marches, but this is one I went in with multiple cameras intentionally trying to document the movement and the moment. And it was, for me, it was very profound. And it was something that I understood the danger of because this was made in New York, outside Grand Central Station. And it was something I told nobody about that I was going to do. I left all communications behind so that I wouldn't be my presence there would be unknown, I suppose. That was the intention. But it also posed a danger of that is that nobody could reach me and I couldn't reach anybody else if anything were to happen. And so that was the risk I took. But I felt it was important to be there and document what was happening um, uh, in New York at the time, and millions of people all around the world showed up to these women's marches. It was really empowering, but it was also kind of something I feel we still need today. But it truly was a really profound moment for me as a photographer. And these are some of the photos that I made during other protest marches throughout the years. This was taken in 2020, right before the election in 2020, City Hall, outside City Hall in San Francisco. This one was especially kind of, I was at the right place at the right time. And I basically turned around and suddenly there was a flash mob taking place. And it was the Chilean protest song that was going on around the world because of the women in Chile were protesting the government's ability to prosecute sexual assault, and the women in Chile were, being assaulted and having no consequences paid to their attackers. And so this song came about and went viral. And so this popped up at the Women's Protest March in 2020. And I made several photographs and all equally quite powerful. But this one Judy picked out and liked. Yeah,
Yeah, I really love the moment, the symmetry. I love the woman's mouth in the center where
yeah,
the point of emphasis is.
yeah.
You did have a number of great shots, and I appreciated the ability to kind of talk through it with you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was snapping away like crazy. I had multiple cameras on me, switching from film to digital. When the film ran out, I switched back to, another camera. So it really helped that I had multiple cameras because I have different views of it, and the way they look are a bit different as well. So I'm really happy with the decision I made to bring multiple cameras, both film and digital. But that's just something I normally do. My motto is always to carry 3 to 5 cameras on me. You just never know. Um, and the series also includes a lot of just everyday people going about. I was at Coney Island and getting on the Scarorama ride, and so yeah, you had to get tickets, I guess. And so yeah, I just caught this couple, and it was a nice interaction. I really like how people kind of interact with me sometimes, and I try to be as quick as possible, but sometimes they catch you and that's okay, and it makes for a good photo. This one I made on the outskirts of Chinatown, and I saw this couple maybe a block and a half away, and man, they were laughing it up like the oldest friends in the world. And it was just such a unique moment. The light was good. And I really debated whether or not um, I wanted to interrupt them to make this photo. But by the time I got there, I decided to get their permission. And this is like one of the few times I asked for permission because I really didn't want to impose myself because it was such a beautiful moment happening between these people that yeah, I didn't want to sour their mood or anything. So I asked for a photo, and the woman was like, "Oh yeah, wait, hold on, he wants to pose." And the rapport was just like a beautiful friendship. And to me at the time, I was like, "Wow, this is an unlikely friendship um, that I don't see very often." And so this photo to me has a special meaning. This was made in France, and I like to play with the idea of shadows and them being the the sole kind of carrier of a photo sometimes. And so this to me was just something that resonated with me when I saw the moment and how the figure, the musician, was kind of in the shadows. And this is another image that I play with silhouettes and shadows and all kinds of light. So this is actually a reflection uh, within a movie theater. And so I happened to look out and waited for this figure to come. It kind of fell into position and I made this photo. And to me, this photo, I feel like not a lot of people understand, but so I was really happy that Judy found, uh, some significance in this photo for her. So I'm really glad to share because it uh, doesn't get out much.
Yeah, it's a really cool photo, and I just love the layers. I don't see like this very easily, so I just
Yeah,
really appreciate you seeing like this so that
yeah,
I can get like super in love with it, you know?
yeah. No, when I made it and I saw when I developed the film, I was just like, wow, it captured everything I saw, but and more. And it was just, it's like a photo for me that keeps on giving. The more you look at it, the more things you can find. And even to this day, um, I still find something new. This was also another play on silhouettes. When I made this photo, this is a photo that really reflected how I was feeling. It was a really tough year. Multiple people I knew had passed away, and I took a trip to kind of restart, kind of slow down. And so on this trip across Europe, I only brought film cameras. So I was intentionally trying to slow down my life and really understand kind of, you know, life as it comes, that you have to make the most of it because it's not going to be here forever. So this photo kind of happened in the biggest moment of calm that I was feeling, and for me, I think it kind of expresses that. This photo I made uh, in Paris, France, obviously, but this was actually a couple that had been observing for a while, and they were making photos all around the area, and I kind of just held my gaze on them and watched what they did, and I saw them setting up shots, and likely probably for Instagram or social media at the time. And so when this shot unfolded, I was sitting or standing very still on the steps, pointing my camera at the Eiffel Tower, but all intentionally waiting for her to uh, make the move that I knew she was going to do. And this is titled Flip Number Two because flip number one was her preparing. And so I got two shots off of it, and you can play back and forth, and it's a little animation for me. But this for me was really about patience and understanding um, what was going to be coming down the road. And that happens in street photography when you're really in tune with your environment. You can actually kind of predict what's about to happen. And it's all about intuition and feeling the energy in your environment. Mhm. And this was made in Los Angeles. So often I shoot when I'm walking down streets, and a lot of times these days people just don't notice me, and so I can get a lot of really close shots without disturbing what's happening. This was shot in Paris, and in Paris, you're not really supposed to photograph uh, people in the street, but I was very quick, and so I jumped out in front of this man photographed him and then took off. And so I didn't really, there was no real time for him to respond, but it was an impulse that I had. And it's one of those things where you have to follow your impulse and try not to overthink anything. But yeah, sometimes you can, you know, surprise yourself in good ways. Um, this was made in Union Square in New York City. And I really like how the shadows play as a major component in this photograph, even though the way the layout is kind of asymmetrical with the dog in the dog walker, but the shadows balance out the whole image. And this is kind of the way our eye works to balance an image. And I'll talk more about Gestalt principles, but I feel like this is kind of an asymmetrical balance. And one of,
That red bandage on the foot just
mm,
like makes the
yeah,
whole thing come
right,
together for
right,
me.
yeah, for sure. Uh, this is the No More Stolen Sisters, but it's part of the movement for to bring awareness to the missing and murdered indigenous women, uh, where a lot of indigenous women throughout Canada, the U.S., Australia, the colonial countries, have been experiencing higher rates of um, homicide and assault, and so this is um, part of that movement to bring more awareness um, to the women of indigenous groups and tribes all across the US, Canada. Um, and it was a really powerful image because they they're just all really strong. This was at the Women's March in San Francisco, outside City Hall, and I made several images of them, but this one wasn't particularly kind of moving for me. And I'm glad Judy picked it because this hasn't been shown yet anywhere. Yeah, first time. This was another photo from outside Civic Center in the march, um, in the protest and march. I just really loved how he had such a presence. Um, Yeah, and it was a quiet, nothing flashy except his buttons, but it was really endearing for me to see him there. There was all kinds of people there, a lot of men that were not really there for support, in the way that the Women's March is intended for. But this man, I feel he was perfect. This was actually a parade in Brooklyn in my neighborhood. In my neighborhood, we have a lot of parades, and so this was the Memorial Day parade, and I made photographs of the scene. And I tend to make photographs of kids during parades because they're just, so engaged in the event. Um, and what I find about photos with kids is that they all have a different reaction to me because of my physicality. Um, and it's kind of really revealing, kind of a piece of who they are to me. And so I find that interaction almost like a little bit of a superpower for me. So I love it,
I
and
love that too, because you can see it in the photos. The kids
yeah,
are like, wow,
yeah,
hello,
yeah,
whereas the adults are busy and they're in a bad mood
right,
and they're
right.
rushing. And I really
And
got that from your work.
thank you. Yeah, no, a lot of people like, oh, how can you photograph kids? I'm like, because there's so much information there, there's so much to document. I pick up on, I was inspired by Helen Levitt, who a lot of her work documented kids in the street. And Vivian Mayer, you know, both those women are street photographers, and they captured kids in the time period they were. If we didn't have them, I think we would have lost so much um, just insight and just understanding the way of life it was back then. And so I feel like me photographing kids is just a way of documenting the moment. This was also from the parade. So yeah, I just kind of shots to capture the tone and the mood and the people of Bay Ridge. And this is my neighborhood I lived in for about 13 years. Oh, close to 11 years, sorry. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I loved my neighborhood. All the people were great. It was a big mixing pot of all the immigrants that come through New York and the Russians, the Italians, you know, the Mexicans, the Chinese. It was just every few years a new group of people would come in. Um, yeah, it was a beautiful thing. This was at Coney Island during the Mermaid Parade, the annual Mermaid Parade. And what I found about photographing a parade like the Mermaid Parade is that it is chaotic. And so I was in the sidelines where, you know, a lot of other photographers were set up, but I'm small enough that I could jump under the caution tape and run into the parade, which I did often. But what I learned was that a lot of people walking the parade would come up directly to me. They would see me and see my camera and just kind of pose for a photo, which rarely they did for the other photographers, which is really interesting. Um, so I got some really close, extreme close-ups for a parade. And this is one of the photos that I made in that regard too, where uh, this woman came up to me and showed me the snake real up close, and I loved it. But I wanted to use this photo to talk about one of the Gestalt principles, which I learned in graphic design about the way the eye moves and collects information. And one of the Gestalt principles in this photo is the isomorphic correspondence. And basically, it's the underlying message in the photo based on, you know, our psychological experiences. So some people may get the undertones of what is is happening in this photo, what it represents, or whatnot. So I just want to leave it at that. I don't feel the need to explain it, but if you do get it, then that is actually one of uh, what's called the isomorphic correspondence, and it's a Gestalt principle that's used a lot in advertising and in everything you see that's geared to get your attention. And I often use a lot of this principles of design in my photography, and that has helped make uh, framing and composing shots. These are the ways that I think that from my previous training in school, and it seeped into my photography work. And let's see, this is actually one of my recent works, and the past few years I've been documenting my family. Kind of where the past few years have been tough for a lot of people, and what I've learned living with my family during these times is that there's a new layer of vulnerability with our loved ones, and the more I photograph them, the more details I see how we interact, and I don't know, it's just a personal project for myself. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but it's just something that's meaningful to me. And this is one of my favorite photographs I made in recent times. And yeah, it's my family kind of having a moment while we're taking a walk around um, the town that we live in. Yeah. Um, And I'm just going to finish up this talk with a self-portrait. Basically, I learned to realize that every photograph we make is actually a self-portrait. And it's comprised of our experiences, the way we think, how we see things and our own values, and how we interpret the world around us. And so I truly believe that every photograph we make is actually indeed a self-portrait.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Jessica.
Mm.
We've got a few questions, and then if you all, we have, we're not, thank you, Kendra and Ron. If you all want to also just ask a question, I've got a couple I'm going to ask now. Feel free
Yeah.
to just ask away.
Yeah.
Um, so Dana is asking, when did you know, like at what age did you know it was time to start pursuing street photography? I love this question. I think it's because it's
Well,
different for everybody, you know?
yeah. Well, so, I've always been photographing even since as a kid. I had a little plastic film camera. But I was always creative, when I was young. I think I started drawing and doodling at 5, and I was always creative. So whatever, I always had like a lot of thoughts. And so, it all kind of has to come out somewhere. And so with street photography, it sort of didn't happen like at an exact moment, but it was really my photography progressing from my work experience. Maybe around 2000, I want to say 2000 is when I shot my first protest march, um, or 2002 when the US was going into war in Iraq. And so I was in college at the time, maybe 22. I just gone out, and when you're young, you're just em emboldened, and like you start to learn things about the world that you didn't really pay attention to until college. You just start to notice how the world is functioning. And so around
Mhm.
2002, 2003, I started photographing the marches that was happening around the world, protesting um, our involvement in the Middle East.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it started informally. And I went back to school to get my MFA at Parsons, and then at the time I was working in documentary, and so I was mostly doing film recording and shooting B-roll, like documentary footage. So it never really left me, street photography, because it's always kind of folded in. But it was around 2008 where I picked up a film camera again. It was a Diana F, and I started experimenting and really getting back into photography and just really getting back into having a camera with me at all times. When I was shooting footage for documentary film, the cameras were a lot heavier, and so I couldn't make photos, easily. And my wrist was really hurting. Those cameras are weighing like 3 pounds, and if you're out there shooting for hours, it really starts to wear on your body. So I really was at the time, 2008 was when cell phones were picking up, and I was kind of being the contrarian. I'm like, well, if that's going to happen, I'm going to go back to film. And so that sort of led me to photograph every day. And then it became photographing everywhere I walked, everywhere I went. And then naturally, I started to photograph people around me in the street.
That's very interesting. And I'm also like, I think I'm just kind of approaching the interest in trying it, but we can talk about that offline.
Okay.
Renee asked a great question that we
Yeah.
get a lot from students, and that is, how do you come up with your titles?
Oh, well, I just usually let the picture, inspire me. I'm kind of, I don't know. So some people say I'm too clever and like I shouldn't add titles, or but on one hand, it's just something I like to do, play with words and images and how they interact and with perception. And sometimes, they're untitled, but other times I feel the photo can benefit from some humor or some like levity. So, but other times I title it out of informational, just so that I have a record that, when I lose my memory one day, I'll look back and it can trigger like, oh, this is where it was made. This is what, a glimpse of like what I was thinking when I made it in the title.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. And Sarah asked a really interesting question. She says, are any of your photos, do they bring up nostalgia for you at all? Do you get this
Um,
feeling of nostalgia when you see your
It
images? Or are you
really,
thinking about that?
right. Well, it does trigger memory. I think
Hmm.
our memories and past experiences are always with us. And for me, I think about the way my mind works is a Rolodex. And sometimes a smell will trigger a memory, sometimes just the surrounding weather or things will trigger, and then I'll just have kind of, yeah, that nostalgic feeling, or just that experience will come up again in my mind. Yeah, it
Hmm.
happens.
Yeah, I've not thought about that myself. I think that's a really good question. And then Eric just asks, how do you decide film over digital, or do you just kind of go back and forth depending on what tool you have with you? Like, or do you make concentrated efforts? Curious, that's a great question as well. And then there's another one that he has after this.
Yeah, so it really depends. If I know that where I'm going and I go with intention, like a parade or a protest, I always carry both film and digital cameras. Like I mentioned before, I have this thing about carrying 3 to 5 cameras on with me at all times. Um, so yeah, like I like to have, and so each film camera will have a different type of film in it, like color or black and white. And so in my mind, I know which camera is which, and it's sort of like a gunslinger. I don't like to use it in that terms, but that's kind of how it is in my arsenal. And so, depending on what unfolds in front of me, I bring out that camera. And so I know, like, to a lot of people, like that seems cumbersome, but for me, I like the extra challenge, and I kind of thrive off like a little bit of the challenge that's not so easy, that's right around my neck, and I just lift my camera to my eye. Um, I don't know. I think I just like to make my life difficult sometimes.
Well,
um,
get ready, because when you're my age, and then they're gonna say, "Oh, you've got 4 bone spurs on your neck. Are you a photographer?" It's like, "Oh, how did you know?"
yeah,
Be
it'll probably,
careful.
yeah, yeah. You're probably right, but see, that's the thing is, I go for really light cameras.
Okay, good.
Really good cameras and really light cameras. And so one of my lightest camera is 0.3 ounces. And it's one of my fun
Oh.
cameras. It's like a little plastic thing, but with a wide angle lens. And I just love it because I can wind it with one hand and shoot it and then
Mm,
wind it. Yeah. So I've learned to be really quick. But yeah, I agree. Like that was the reason I went into street photography,
yeah.
because I was really tired of holding a giant Canon that weighs like, 3 to 4 pounds with the lens. And so for me, being, uh, like feeling light is really important. I usually have one kind of semi uh, heavier camera, which is usually the digital one, but it depends where I know where I'm going, then I have certain cameras with me.
Hmm.
And yeah, I try to know what's loaded in all my film cameras and have them ready. So it seems chaotic, but I seem to thrive off it.
Okay, well, that's good. And then how do you decide if you want a photo well, obviously, if you shoot it in black and white, right? Are you making that decision right away with your
Yeah,
black and white film
yeah,
camera, or are
yeah,
you doing it digitally? Like, how do you make
yeah.
it
It just
the
clicked in my
choices?
mind.
Oh my
It's just
God.
it's just there. Yeah.
Fascinating that your
Yeah.
mind is even more chatty to you than my mind is to me. And that makes me feel a little, I don't know, a little relief and then also a little anxious.
Yeah, but for some reason, I enjoy the challenge and the quickness. I want to see how quick I can be. I'm not making gold photo, like amazing photos every time. There's a lot of
Mhm.
mistakes involved, but that's part of the learning experience, I feel. And for me, it's really about the joy, and I haven't really pushed my, aspirations or career, probably to the fullest that some people do. But it's mostly because I want to preserve my joy and have fun.
Well, that's good.
And for me, street photography is just so engaging. It makes me learn all the time. I'm curious, I'm engaging with people, I'm pushing myself. It's a very physical activity, both for the mind and the body. You're in it, you're living in the moment, and that's one of the things that for me street photography is just so rewarding. And not just making good photos, it's just really being out there and pushing yourself to see
Hmm.
the world as it is and not with blinders. You're out there, with everybody, so yeah.
So when you're shooting digitally, do you keep everything in color automatically, or do you take
uh
that digital file and then you decide after the fact? Like when you
yeah,
aren't
no,
using the
right.
film, how do
Yeah,
you manage the
it's the
digital?
same with film. Like I'll know, I treat the digital camera like a film camera, so if it's in color, I typically with digital I shoot in color because it has that
Mhm.
option to shoot it, like have it in black and white if you really
Uh-huh.
need it. But I noticed, I realized like you can, when you shoot in black and white, you have a different mindset,
Hmm.
and you're looking at things differently than if you were shooting in color.
Hmm.
So I typically these days I shoot in color with digital, and
Okay.
that's
Right. And
my
not film. And then you
yeah.
shoot black and white with black and white film.
Yeah,
That's so
I feel that
interesting.
it comes out stronger in film versus digital.
Hmm.
I I still feel digital that cannot replicate what black and white film does.
Yeah, not even with the filters that you can add.
Yeah, no.
Okay, this is a great question that I was going to ask more about too, but Eric is asking, um, he wants you to talk a little bit more about the female gaze.
Yeah,
He's like,
sure.
can you tell me more about the female gaze? And if all the subjects are men.
Right. So this is my personal female gaze. I'm not going to speak for other women, but as my life experience has been, is that I've learned that a lot of women with disabilities, even men, they are seen in a very asexual manner, and which is obviously not true, that we are all human beings with, our own desires. And
Mhm.
but in society, we often do feel overlooked in that way, and we don't. Um, I personally sometimes do feel overlooked, or my physicality is the first thing someone sees, um, and they don't really get to delve more. It really depends on the person that that's in front of me, like what their
Mhm.
experience is with somebody with a disability and how they're going to act. A lot of people don't know how to act, and if they do, it's awkward, or they carry their own perceptions and their own ideas of who you might be, and they project it onto you
Mhm.
without finding out who you really are. And so to walk through life with other people's constant perceptions, and not just like with race and gender and your physicality. It's everything that maybe they feel entitled to give you advice or tell you what to do or offer you help when you didn't ask. All these little things that kind of pick away at who you are, and so like for me a long time I had to, sometimes I feel like I have to walk with armor. As I gotten older, I've learned to release that armor and kind of just accept who I am, and just embrace the world openly and take people for who they are, and not project my own perceptions. And so for me, the female gaze is about me exploring and publicly acknowledging where I stand on, my own sexuality.
Hmm. That is super interesting. And then I also made me think about, so you are a woman. Yeah, thanks, Eric, for asking the question. So you're a woman, or you identify as a woman. And you also say that you have a disability. And so when people are asking to help you, or like, oh, can I open the door? Right? It's hard to, that gets conflated in some ways. Are they asking me because I'm a female? Are they asking me because maybe I'm different than they are, or they feel like I can't manage it on my own? That's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I give people the benefit of the doubt, and typically I can see where their intentions lie.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it gets kind of strange when they start putting all these perceptions on you, like, oh, you must, you know, need help with this in your life or that, or you can't do this or that. And so, rather than asking, they're kind of just already assuming that's the case,
Hmm.
So it's sort of, I mean, a lot of people, in terms of disability awareness, a lot of people, I feel that it does strip away their humanity a little bit when you
Hmm.
either put them on a pedestal, you don't give them the chance to show you who they are,
Hmm.
not based on what's inside, but like outside. And so I think a lot of people with disabilities feel, not only overlooked, but a little resentful, like you didn't bother to like ask first. You just did.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where you know, there's a stance on it. But as I gotten older, I've given people the more benefit of the doubt and try to see where their intentions are. And the spectrum varies. I've been through a lot of things, and but I learned that people will tell you who they are based on how they behave,
Hmm.
and that informs me who's in front of me. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I've learned to embrace what is seen as maybe possibly a weakness, but it's become one of my greatest strengths. It's like as I said, it's like a superpower. I can see who you are based
Hmm.
on exactly how you treat me.
Mm. God, so I mean, thank you for sharing that with
Yeah,
us. I think that's just so beautiful.
thank you. Yeah, I want to say that photography for me has um I guess I don't know if there's any more questions, but in terms of if anyone wants to jump into photography for themselves or street photography, I tell people all the time, just study the things that make you curious, like art, um, anthropology, psychology, sociology, like anything that is interesting to you. It ultimately inform you and sneak their way into your photography. And it makes for a lot more interesting photographs than just, beautiful sunsets or whatever. If you're trying to make meaningful photographs that are profound in nature, or they they resonate with people, you have to hit at the core of what is that emotionality that you can gather from the scene or the thing that you're photographing. And in order to do that, you have to have a very experienced mind in all the facets of life. You have to observe, and really just study and look and learn to you know, be open minded and kind of let the world teach you.
Yeah, beautiful. Uh, does anybody have another question before I ask a question? I'm trying to be equitable here. No? Okay, so my question is, how do you ever think about this difference? This is what we're talking about right now in one of my classes, the
Mhm.
difference between looking and seeing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
are you aware of when you're just looking and then when you're seeing? I'm like messing around with my own head about this a lot right now, so I'm curious what
yeah.
your thoughts are.
Yeah. So I would say I really learned to see when I took painting class. And one of my professors was Wayne Thiebaud, and
Oh my
he,
gosh.
yeah, he's he passed away recently.
I know.
But I took several painting classes with them, and he taught
Gosh.
me so much about seeing, which is not just what's in front of us, but colors and how they are everywhere you see. Even in black and white image, there's color,
Mhm.
and our eyes, absorb certain things based on the rays and what gets blocked out. Um, so he taught us how to see in a very like detailed way, in a like almost microscope, like you're delving into the object and you're really studying the object. So he used to have us paint like really mundane things. He would say, empty your backpack and pull out one thing and you're going to make a painting out of it, like just really mundane things. And he really taught us how to see beyond what the functionality of that object was, and to create a beautiful painting. Like I pulled out a little box of Tic Tacs, and that is literally my one of my favorite photos because he taught me that one single brushstroke can carry the entire painting.
Mm,
Yeah, really trusting yourself and looking at the object in front of you, but seeing beyond what the object is because you already had a preconceived idea of what it is,
mhm.
right? So you're really trying to override that. Um, so in street photography, yeah, it's also about, you're looking, you're scanning, but you also have to bring in, I mean, you can't not bring in your own perspective about things and the more you shoot, the more your instincts are kicked in gear and you're seeing things that people don't normally see because you're really in tune. And I would say practice is what gets you that intuition and
Mhm.
that ability to anticipate the next um, move somebody's going to make. And so that's what I've been able to do is the more I'm out in the street, the more I can almost have the psychic ability to see what happens before it happens.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. If
Are we out of time?
I think we're at time. So
Okay.
I'm so happy that we recorded this so much.
Yeah. I'm glad to be.
Wow.
I just wanted to mention this is my website, Chen Photographs. So I have photographs and writing. It was kind of the website's sort of a personal diary, a journal of sorts. It's not like a typical website. Um, but I'm actually in the works of uh, writing more and producing posts for. So I've joined Substack.
Oh,
So
good.
it's really in the beginning. If you want to subscribe, this is my Substack. So it'll have writing and photos and kind of a lot of ideas I expressed here today. So feel free to subscribe, and I do have a subscription version as well. So yeah, I
Ah,
just
the
want to
great news.
plug
I
that
really
in.
enjoy Substack a lot.
Yeah, I'm getting started, so I've gotten a couple posts in the works I haven't published yet. So if you sign up now, you'll be the first to see everything. You'll be it from the ground up.
Woo! And the crowd goes wild.
Yeah.
Eric, you better do it right now. Thanks, everybody. Jessica, thank you so much. See you next week.
All right. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye. Good to see you, Kendra. She's gone. Bye bye.
Bye.